The silence of Xylo's station had become Kale's sanctuary. 5 years of routine maintenance checks, monitoring equipment readouts, and minimal interaction with a handful of remaining staff had crafted a perfectly predictable existence. Just as he wanted it, just as he needed it. The small mining outpost clung to the barren surface of asteroid XY 274, far from the main trade routes of the Galactic Alliance. Once bustling with over 50 personnel extracting valuable minerals, budget cuts and automation had reduced the human presence to a skeleton crew of 8. For Kale, this suited him perfectly. His quarters were sparse but functional: a bed, a small desk, a terminal, and a single photograph face down in the drawer. The photograph was all that remained of a past life, of a family lost in the Centauri transit disaster. The official report had called it a navigational malfunction. Kale called it negligence. Either way, the result was the same: 37 lives, including his wife and daughter, extinguished in the cold vacuum of space. The Alliance's generous settlement came with unspoken expectations of silence. The money sat untouched in his account, while Kale retreated to the farthest corner of inhabited space he could find. Xylo Station had been his self-imposed exile for half a decade. On this particular cycle, Kale's maintenance route included the seldom-visited southern quadrant of the asteroid. The area housed backup power generators and emergency atmosphere processors, equipment vital enough to maintain, but used rarely enough that a quarterly check was deemed sufficient. Kale moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, his footsteps echoing in the empty passages. The diagnostic tool in his hand hummed softly as he checked each system, logging performance metrics and scheduling minor repairs when necessary. It was in the auxiliary air purification chamber that he first heard it, a sound so out of place that he initially dismissed it as equipment feedback. But when it came again, a soft whimper, unmistakably organic, Kale froze. Following the sound, he discovered a small alcove behind a rarely used filtration unit. Huddled there, trembling, was a child. A child where no child should be. Where no child could be. The girl appeared to be 6 or 7 years old, with pale blue-tinged skin and silver-white hair that seemed to capture and reflect the dim emergency lighting. Her clothing was unlike anything in Alliance Standard issue, a form-fitting bodysuit of iridescent material with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when she moved. But what caught Kale's attention most were her eyes, large, luminous, and filled with fear. She cowered away from him, pressing deeper into the alcove, one arm clutched protectively against her body. Alliance protocols were clear. All unauthorized personnel were to be reported immediately. Security breaches, especially on remote outposts, were treated with the utmost severity. For a moment, Kale's hand hovered over his communicator. The girl whimpered again, and Kale saw what she was holding against her body: a wounded arm with a laceration that oozed silvery blue fluid. Blood, he presumed, though unlike any he had seen before. 5 years of isolation had built walls around Kale's heart, but they weren't impenetrable. Not completely. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, crouching to appear less threatening. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't respond verbally, but her eyes, surprisingly intelligent for one so young, studied him intently. Kale reached slowly into his toolkit and extracted a basic medical pack. "This might help," he said, holding up a tube of universal healing gel. The Alliance product was designed to be compatible with most known sentient physiologies. When she didn't move, Kale applied a small amount to his own finger to demonstrate its harmlessness. After a moment's hesitation, the girl extended her injured arm slightly. With gentle movements, Kale cleaned and treated the wound. The girl remained silent throughout the process, though her trembling subsided gradually. "You shouldn't be here," Kale said, more to himself than to her. "This station isn't safe for a child. There are protocols, procedures." The girl tilted her head, watching him with those unervingly perceptive eyes. "Are you hungry?" Kale asked, surprising himself with the question. A slight nod. From his pack, Kale produced an emergency ration bar. The girl accepted it cautiously, sniffed it, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly, and she quickly devoured the rest. "There's water, too," Kale said, offering a small container. As the girl drank, Kale's mind raced through possibilities. She couldn't have arrived on any official transport. The station hadn't received visitors in months. There were no settlements on this asteroid, and the nearest inhabited system was weeks away, even at standard jump speeds. "How did you get here?" he asked, not expecting an answer. The girl pointed upward, then made a crashing motion with her hands. "You fell," Kale guessed, frowning. "Your ship crashed." Another nod. Alliance regulations mandated immediate reporting of unregistered craft, especially those attempting clandestine landings. The penalties for harboring unregistered aliens were severe. Employment termination would be the least of Kale's concerns. And yet, "Can you stand?" "Walk," he asked. The girl rose to her feet, unsteady but capable of movement. "I'm going to help you," Kale said, the decision forming even as he spoke the words. "But you need to be quiet and follow me. Understand?" A solemn nod. Kale checked the corridor and, finding it empty, led the girl through a series of maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main pathways and security cameras. They reached his quarters without encountering any other staff members, a small mercy. Once inside, Kale secured the door and turned to find the girl examining his sparse living space with curious eyes. "You'll be safe here for now," he said. "We'll figure out something." The girl touched the control panel beside his desk, and to Kale's astonishment, the display responded to her, cycling through various station schematics before he could intervene. "Don't touch that," he said, perhaps more sharply than intended. The girl withdrew her hand instantly, her expression closing. "I'm sorry," Kale softened his tone. There are rules here. Important rules." He set up a makeshift bed using spare blankets and watched as the exhausted child curled up almost immediately. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and regular. Kale sat at his desk, the scheduled maintenance report forgotten, staring at his unexpected guest. What had he done? What was he doing? 5 years of careful isolation, of avoiding complications and emotional entanglements, undone by one wounded child. He should have reported her immediately. Instead, Kale found himself recalling another child, his daughter Mira, who would have been about this age now had she lived. The memory, usually suppressed with ruthless efficiency, surged forward with unexpected clarity. The girl shifted in her sleep, murmuring sounds in an unknown language, and Kale felt something long dormant stir within him, something dangerously close to protectiveness. Just until morning, he told himself. Then I'll figure out what to do. But when morning came, the girl was gone. Kale searched his quarters thoroughly, then cautiously extended his search to the nearby maintenance tunnels. No trace. It was as if she had never existed, save for the rumpled blankets on his floor and the missing medical supplies and ration bars he'd left accessible. For the next 3 cycles, Kale found himself distracted, constantly scanning shadowed corners and isolated corridors during his rounds. Twice he changed his usual route to include the southern quadrant where he'd first encountered her. Nothing. He found himself hoping she had somehow found her way home, wherever that was, though logic suggested this was impossible. The alternative, that she was still hiding somewhere on the station, alone and possibly injured, troubled him more than he cared to admit. On the 4th cycle, Kale returned to his quarters after an extended maintenance shift to find the door unlocked. He entered cautiously, hands tightening around his toolkit, ready to use it as an improvised weapon if necessary. The girl stood in the center of his quarters, but she wasn't alone. Beside her, one protective arm around the child's shoulders, stood a woman. Like the girl, she had pale blue skin and silver-white hair, though hers was longer, elaborately braided and interwoven with what appeared to be thin metallic threads. She wore similar iridescent clothing, but more complex in design, with additional layers and what might have been ceremonial elements. Around her neck hung a small device that pulsed with soft light. But it was her eyes that held Kale's attention, the same luminous quality as the child's, but filled with a mixture of fear, desperation, and fierce determination. The woman moved slightly, positioning herself between Kale and the girl, a protective gesture that required no translation. "You helped my daughter," she said, her voice melodic but strained. The words came from the device at her neck, a translator. She showed me. She remembered. Kale lowered his toolkit slowly. "She's your daughter?" A nod. "Lyra." Then, gesturing to herself, "Ilera. How did you get on this station?" Kale asked, keeping his voice low. "There have been no incoming ships, no authorized landings." Ilera's expression tightened. "We come in small vessel. Hidden. Damaged in escape." She touched the translator at her neck, adjusting something. "The language is difficult. Your Alliance standard has limitations. Escape from what? From those who would erase us." Her gaze was unflinching now. "The Enclave does not permit differences. Does not permit evolution." Kale frowned. "The Enclave? I don't know this group. Beyond your borders. Beyond your knowledge." Ilera's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. "They hunt us. Have hunted us across 3 systems. We believed we had found safety here in your Alliance territory." "This is a restricted mining outpost," Kale explained, feeling a growing sense of unease. "Not a refugee center. There are procedures, official channels. Official channels require documentation, identification, registration." Ilera's voice hardened. "Registration means records. Records can be accessed, found, traced. By this Enclave, they have agents, infiltrators, even in your Alliance." Kale ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from before his time on Xylos. "What do you want from me? Why come back here?" "Lyra trusted you," Ilera said simply. "She showed me what you did, how you help her when others would not." "I gave her a ration bar and some medical gel," Kale said, uncomfortable with the implication that this small kindness had created some sort of bond or obligation. "You showed mercy," Ilera countered, "on a station of cold metal and colder hearts." She stepped forward, and Kale noticed a slight limp, a barely concealed grimace of pain. "You're injured," he said. "Our landing was not gentle. The vessel cannot fly again." Ilera's composure cracked slightly. "We have nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and they are coming." "Who's coming?" "The Enclave. Soon." Her eyes held his, desperate and proud at once. "We intercepted transmissions. They have traced our path to this system." Kale felt the comfortable isolation of his existence crumbling around him. "You need to speak with station security, with Alliance authorities. I'm just a maintenance engineer. I can't." "They will detain us," Ilera interrupted. "Question us. And while they decide our fate, the Enclave will come. Will claim us as fugitives from justice. Will take us back." Her voice broke slightly. "We'll take Lyra." The child pressed closer to her mother, eyes downcast now, small fingers clutching at Ilera's clothing. "What could I possibly do?" Kale asked, genuinely bewildered. Ilera straightened, seeming to gather her strength and resolve. "Your Alliance laws. They recognize family bonds, yes? Protect family units? Generally, yes, but then I ask." Ilera faltered, closed her eyes briefly, then continued with renewed determination. "I beg you to be my husband." Kale stared, certain he had misunderstood. "What? In name? In law? A marriage of protection." Ilera's words came faster now, more urgent. "Your Alliance citizenship extended to spouse. To spouse's child. Protection under law. Harder to separate. Harder to extradite. You want me to marry you? A complete stranger." Kale couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. "To save my daughter." Ilera's gaze didn't waver. "To save Lyra." The child looked up at the sound of her name, her eyes moving between the adults, understanding perhaps not the words but the weight of the moment. "This is insane," Kale said, pacing the small confines of his quarters. "Even if I agreed, which I'm not saying I do, there are procedures, documentation. It's not as simple as saying the words." "You have access to systems," Ilera said. "To station records. You can enter data. Yes? Create necessary documentation." Kale stopped pacing. "You're asking me to commit fraud, to violate Alliance regulations, to risk my position, my freedom." "Yes." The simplicity of her admission silenced him. I asked this knowing what I ask. I would not, if there was any other way. Lyra moved then, stepping away from her mother's protection. She approached Cale slowly, deliberately, and held out her small hand. And it was the empty wrapper from the ration bar he had given her. She kept it, Alaris said softly, as proof that kindness exists even here. Cale looked at the wrapper, then at the child's face. At the hope there, fragile but present. At the mother, proud even in her desperation. He thought of his own lost family, of the emptiness of his existence these past 5 years, of the hollowness of safety purchased with isolation. I need time to think, he said finally. This isn't a decision I can make in a moment. We have little time, Ilara reminded him. But we will wait. Cale nodded, then gestured to his bed. You should rest. Both of you. You'll be safe here for now. As Ilara guided her exhausted daughter to the narrow bed, Cale retreated to his desk, mind racing through possibilities, regulations, risks. Through the ethical maze of what he was being asked to do. Later, watching the two sleep, the child curled trustingly against her mother, Ilara's arm protectively encircling Lyra, even in slumber. Cale recognized the weight of the decision before him. To continue his safe, predictable existence, or to risk everything for strangers, to remain numb, or to feel again, with all the vulnerability that entailed. He didn't sleep that night. The soft hiss of the door, closing behind him, woke Ilara instantly. She sat up, tense and alert, relaxing only slightly when she recognized Cale entering the quarters. You've been gone, she observed, carefully extracting herself from her still-sleeping daughter. I needed to check something. Cale placed a data tablet on the desk, not meeting her eyes directly. Alliance citizenship can indeed be extended to a spouse through a simplified registration process, especially in remote outposts where formal ceremonies aren't always possible. Ilara moved to the desk, hope visibly rising. Then you will help us? I have conditions, Cale said, finally looking at her. First, complete honesty. I need to know exactly who the Enclave is and why they're hunting you. I need to know what I'm getting into. Ilara nodded slowly. This is fair. Second, this arrangement would be temporary. Once you're safely away from the station and settled somewhere secure, we dissolve the marriage. Another nod, though Cale thought he detected a flicker of something. Relief? Disappointment? In her expression. Third, he continued, you follow my lead while on this station. No unauthorized access to systems. No wandering off. No drawing attention. We understand discretion, Ilara said with a hint of sharpness. Our survival has depended on it. Then we have an agreement, Cale said, extending his hand in the universal gesture of a deal struck. Ilara looked at his hand for a moment, then placed her own in it. Her skin was cooler than human standard, her grip firm. An agreement, she echoed. Lyra stirred on the bed, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Seeing Cale, she offered a small, hesitant smile, the first he had seen from her. Something twisted in Cale's chest, an emotion long dormant. I should get you both some breakfast, he said, withdrawing his hand from Alaris. Then we can start working on the documentation. Over the meal, standard station rations that Ilara and Lyra approached with cautious curiosity. Ilara began her explanation. The Enclave is... She paused, searching for words. A society within societies. A doctrine more than a place. They believe in purity of form. Original form. They're against genetic modification. Cale guessed. Against evolution. Natural evolution. Ilara touched her blue-tinged skin. My people settled a high-radiation moon 3 generations ago. Over time, our bodies adapted. Changed. That's not unusual. Environmental adaptation occurs in many species. Not as quickly as with us, Ilara said quietly. Not as dramatically. Each generation shows more changes, more abilities. Cale studied her more carefully. What kind of abilities? Increased radiation tolerance, enhanced cellular regeneration, a pause, and other things the Enclave fears, such as, Ilara hesitated, then reached for Cale's diagnostic tool that lay on the desk. As her fingers touched it, The device activated without her pressing any controls. The display flickered, data streaming across it in sequences Kale had never seen before. Technological attunement, she said, removing her hand. The device returned to normal. We can communicate with machines, sense their patterns, their purpose. Kale stared at the diagnostic tool, then at Lyra, recalling how she had interfaced with his terminal. Both of you can do this. Lyra more strongly than I. The younger generation, the changes are more pronounced. Alara's expression softened as she looked at her daughter. The Enclave calls it contamination, deviation. They believe it threatens what makes us human. You were human then? Originally? Human-derived? Yes. From Earth colony stock. A sad smile. Though the Enclave would dispute this now. And they'll want to, what? Cure you? Study you? Alara's expression hardened. Eliminate the deviation. Return the bloodline to purity. She placed a protective hand on Lyra's shoulder. Starting with the youngest, most changed. Kale felt a chill at the implication. They would harm a child. They would correct an aberration. By any means necessary. Alara's eyes held his. Now you understand why we run. Why we hide. Why I ask what I ask of you. Kale nodded slowly. The situation was more complex and more dangerous than he had initially realized. The Alliance doesn't generally sanction genetic purging, but their stance on unsanctioned evolutionary offshoots is ambiguous at best, especially with evidence of unusual abilities. We need more than ambiguity, Alara said. We need protection. I'm working on it. Kale turned to the data tablet. I need to create records for both of you. Names that will pass Alliance verification. We cannot use our true identities, Alara agreed. The Enclave has flagged them in multiple systems. We'll need to be creative, then. Kale began inputting data. I can register you as a specialist brought in for the new atmosphere processors. Your unusual appearance can be explained as adaptive gear for high radiation environments, not uncommon in specialized engineering fields. And Lyra, your daughter, accompanying you on a long-term assignment. Kale frowned at the screen. The marriage registration is trickier. It will require biometric confirmation from both of us, and there will be a record sent to Central Alliance databases. Is this a problem? It depends on how thoroughly the Enclave can access Alliance systems. The record can be backdated, showing a marriage that preceded your arrival, but it will still be new in the system. Alara considered this. We need only enough time to secure transport off station, to reach a place where we can disappear more effectively. And where would that be? There are rumors of others like us, gathering in the outer territories beyond major Alliance jurisdiction. Alara's voice lowered. A sanctuary. Kale worked through the night, constructing a plausible history for Alara, now officially designated as Elena Valen, specialist in atmospheric stabilization systems. Her unusual appearance was documented as adaptive physiological modifications specific to her work environment. Lyra became Lena Valen, with educational records appropriate to a child of her apparent age. The most challenging aspect was altering station logs to show their official arrival 3 weeks prior. Kale had to carefully manipulate security footage, duty rosters, and supply consumption metrics to eliminate any inconsistencies that might trigger an automated audit. This could work, he said finally, setting aside the tablet as station lights automatically brightened to simulate dawn. But we'll need to be careful. The other crew members rarely interact with me by choice, but they'll be curious about you. Alara, who had watched his work with quiet intensity, nodded. We can be invisible when needed, unremarkable when not. I've scheduled a maintenance inspection of the North Quadrant environmental systems today. That gives us a reason to be seen together in the station. Kale rubbed his tired eyes. We'll need to make the marriage registration official before you're entered into any other station systems. What does this involve? A simple biometric confirmation process. Handprints, retinal scans. Kale hesitated. And there's a required genetic compatibility screening, standard for all Alliance marriages, to document any necessary medical considerations. Alara tensed visibly. Genetic screening? I can bypass most of it, Kale assured her quickly. Enter predetermined results. but the system will require at least a minimal sample from each of us to show the process was completed. This is dangerous, Alaris said. Our genetic markers are what the Enclave tracks most carefully. It's a closed system scan. The results aren't transmitted beyond the station database, and I can restrict access to my authorization level only. Kale met her worried gaze. I understand your concern, but without this, the documentation won't withstand even basic verification. After a moment's consideration, Alara nodded reluctantly. Very well, but you must ensure the data is purged afterward. I will, Kale promised. Now, you should both eat something. We need to make an appearance in the station proper soon. While they ate, Kale provided Alara with a basic layout of the station, key personnel to avoid, and emergency protocols should they become separated. Lyra listened with surprising attentiveness for a child her age, occasionally asking clarifying questions that Alara translated. She wants to know if the other people have guns, Alara relayed at one point. Security personnel are armed, yes, but standard maintenance staff aren't, Kale answered, troubled by the question. Has she seen weapons used before? Alara's expression tightened. Our escape from the Enclave was not peaceful. Before Kale could inquire further, his communication device chimed with a standard work assignment notification. We need to go, he said, checking the details. Maintenance Chief Riker has approved the North Quadrant inspection. We'll complete the registration on the way. The corridors of Xylo Station were utilitarian and largely deserted. Automated mining operations had reduced the need for constant human oversight, with most remaining personnel focused on system monitoring and occasional physical interventions when automation failed. Kale led Alara and Lyra through the less-traveled maintenance passages, explaining station operations in a professional tone for the benefit of any surveillance systems. To anyone monitoring, they would appear as a maintenance engineer briefing a specialist consultant. They encountered no one until reaching the central administration hub, where a board security officer manned the identification checkpoint. Maintenance pass-through for environmental specialist Valen. Kale stated formally, presenting his authorization credentials. The officer barely glanced up from his display. Purpose: North Quadrant Atmospheric Assessment. Chief Riker's authorization, code Tango 74. A perfunctory check of the system, a bored nod. Proceed. As they passed through the checkpoint, Kale felt Alara's tension in the slight pressure of her hand against his arm, a touch that would appear natural for a supposed couple, but served primarily to steady her nerves. Lyra walked between them, eyes downcast as instructed, the perfect image of a well-behaved child accompanying her parents on a work assignment. The marriage registration terminal was located in a small alcove off the main administration corridor, a practical arrangement for a remote outpost where personal administrative needs were considered secondary to operational efficiency. Quick and straightforward, Kale murmured as they approached the terminal. The system just needs confirmation from both of us that the union is consensual, followed by the biometric verifications. Alara nodded, her expression carefully neutral despite the obvious strain beneath. The process proceeded smoothly until the genetic compatibility scan. As promised, Kale input override codes to predetermined results, but the system still required minimal samples, a simple finger prick for each of them. When the needle touched Alara's skin, Kale noticed her involuntary flinch. The momentary flicker of fear quickly masked. The silver-blue fluid that emerged was processed by the system without alert, confirming Kale's programming had successfully suppressed any anomaly warnings. Registration complete. The terminal announced flatly. Union recognized under Alliance Frontier Statute 33B. Documentation transmitted to secured station records. Kale released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That's it. Officially, we're married. Alara's relief was palpable, though quickly contained. What now? Now we proceed with the scheduled inspection. Maintain the appearance of routine. Kale guided them away from the terminal. The North Quadrant is mostly automated. We'll have privacy to discuss next steps. As they moved through the station, Kale became acutely aware of the strangeness of their situation. 4 or 5 years, he He had existed in self-imposed isolation, interaction limited to perfunctory exchanges with fellow crew members. Now he walked the familiar corridors with a woman officially designated as his wife and a child who regarded him with cautious trust. The sensation was disorienting, not unpleasant, but opening fractures in the carefully constructed numbness he had maintained since the Centauri disaster. In the North Quadrant, as promised, they encountered no other personnel. The vast atmospheric processing chamber hummed with the steady rhythm of machinery, maintaining the station's artificial environment. "It's safe to talk here," Kale said, engaging a diagnostic routine that would justify their extended presence. The ambient noise masked conversation, and surveillance is minimal. Alara released Lyra's hand, allowing the child to explore the immediate area while remaining within sight. "The documentation is complete, then? We are protected as much as possible given the circumstances," Kale confirmed. "But we still need to arrange your departure from the station. That's more complicated. There must be supply ships, personnel transports. On scheduled intervals, yes. The next supply drone arrives in 3 days, but it's fully automated, no passenger capacity. The quarterly personnel rotation isn't for another 6 weeks." Alara's expression fell. "We cannot wait 6 weeks. The Enclave." "I know." Kale interrupted gently. "I'm looking at alternatives. There's an emergency evacuation vessel in the South Docking Bay. Officially, it's reserved for medical emergencies or critical station personnel in case of catastrophic failure. And unofficially, it could be repurposed with the right access codes and system adjustments." Kale ran a hand through his hair, a gesture becoming more frequent as his carefully ordered existence continued to unravel. "It would trigger alerts, but you'd have a head start before any pursuit could be organized." "You've considered this carefully," Alara observed, studying him with those unervingly perceptive eyes. "I've had a lot of time to learn this station's systems, its vulnerabilities." Kale shrugged. "Never had a reason to use that knowledge before. And now you risk everything for strangers." It wasn't a question, but there was a weight of curiosity behind the words. "I'm not sure why," Kale admitted, watching Lyra as she tentatively approached one of the atmospheric processors, her small hands hovering near but not touching the control panel. "Maybe I've been numb for too long." Before Alara could respond, Lyra called out softly in their native language, a note of excitement in her voice. "What is it?" Kale asked as Alara moved quickly to her daughter's side. "She senses something in the system," Alara explained, her own expression growing concerned as she placed her hand near the processor's diagnostic panel. "There's a discrepancy, a pattern that doesn't belong." "What kind of discrepancy?" Alara's brow furrowed in concentration. "Information flowing where it shouldn't, outside the station's normal channels." A cold weight settled in Kale's stomach. "You think the station's being monitored?" "By the Enclave?" "Not directly, but there's an access point." Alara gestured to the processor. "This unit is transmitting data beyond its programmed parameters. Subtle, masked beneath normal operations, but present. That shouldn't be possible. These systems are isolated from external networks, which means someone has modified it. Recently." Alara's eyes met his, the fear in them now unmistakable. "They're already here, Kale. Watching. Waiting." The revelation shifted everything. If the Enclave had agents or technology already in place on Xylos, their timetable had just accelerated dramatically. "We need to move quickly," Kale decided, shutting down the diagnostic routine. "Back to my quarters. We'll gather supplies and make preparations for immediate departure. The evacuation vessel may already be compromised if they've infiltrated station systems." Kale finished her thought. "We'll need an alternative." As they hurried back through the corridors, Kale's mind raced through possibilities. The station had limited options for departure. The evacuation vessel, maintenance skiffs designed for short-range external repairs, and the automated supply drones. None were ideal for an escape attempt, particularly with the new knowledge that the Enclave might be monitoring station activities. In his quarters, Kale immediately accessed his terminal, initiating a series of discrete system queries designed to detect unauthorized modifications or access points. The results confirmed his fears: subtle anomalies in communications protocols, data rerouting through unexpected pathways, minuscule delays in certain command executions. "Someone's been in the system," he confirmed grimly. "Professional work. I wouldn't have noticed without knowing what to look for." Alara stood close, Lyra pressed against her side. "How much do they know?" "Impossible to tell. The intrusion is sophisticated." Kale continued his analysis. "But it gives us one advantage. I can use their own infiltration pathways to create false data trails." "Misdirection? To what end?" "To buy us time. Make them look in the wrong places while we prepare." Kale's fingers moved rapidly over the interface. "I'm creating a false maintenance schedule that will show us working in the East Quadrant for the next 12 hours. Meanwhile, we'll be accessing the emergency vessel." Alara placed a hand on his arm, halting his movements. "You keep saying we. This is our fight, not yours. Once we have a vessel, you could remain here, claim ignorance of our departure." Kale met her gaze steadily. "If the Enclave is as thorough as you suggest, they'll know of our registered marriage. They'll question my involvement regardless." He didn't add the other reason, that something in him had awakened, something that refused to return to the empty existence he had maintained for 5 years. "You would leave everything behind? Your position? Your safety?" "What safety?" Kale asked quietly. "What position? I've been hiding here as surely as you've been running, just in a different way." Alara studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, a gesture containing both acceptance and respect. "We should gather only essentials," she said, turning to help Lyra collect the few items they had. Food, water, medical supplies. As they prepared, Kale accessed restricted station schematics, plotting the most discreet route to the emergency vessel. He also initiated a delayed system diagnostic that, when triggered, would create multiple false alarms throughout the station, a distraction to cover their departure. "One more thing," he said, reaching into the drawer where he kept his few personal possessions. He removed a small metallic object, an old-style physical access key, rarely used in modern Alliance facilities. "Emergency override for the evacuation vessel. Standard protocols can be hacked or blocked remotely, but this is a hardwired failsafe. The chief engineer insisted on keeping it when the station was upgraded last cycle. Called it his paranoia precaution." "You took this from him?" Alara asked. "I'm the chief engineer," Kale said with a faint smile. "At least on this rotation." The position rotates among the senior technical staff. For the first time since they'd met, Alara's expression lightened, a brief smile transforming her features. "You are full of surprises." "Husband." The word, spoken with a mixture of humor and growing warmth, affected Kale more than he expected. A reminder of the strange intimacy forced upon them by circumstance. Before he could respond, the station's communication system activated with a harsh tone, followed by an automated announcement. "Attention, all personnel. Unscheduled vessel approaching. Docking protocols initiated. Security Level 3 procedures in effect." Kale and Alara exchanged alarmed glances. "They're here," she whispered. The sudden shift from preparation to immediate action erased all hesitation. Kale gathered their hastily packed supplies while Alara secured Lyra in the concealing outer garment they had prepared, a maintenance technician's coat, oversized but sufficient to hide her distinctive appearance if they encountered other personnel. "Change of plan," Kale said tersely. "We can't wait for my distraction program to activate. We need to move now, while security is focused on the arriving vessel." The corridors were more active than usual, with station personnel moving purposefully toward assigned security stations. Kale led Alara and Lyra through service passages where possible, maintaining a confident, unhurried pace when they had to traverse main corridors. Maintenance team headed to South Quadrant Environmental Controls, Kale stated professionally when challenged by a security officer. Possible fluctuations detected in atmosphere composition. Chief Riker's orders. The officer, focused on the more pressing matter of the unscheduled arrival, merely nodded and continued past them. As they approached the emergency vessel's docking bay, Kale accessed a monitoring terminal, checking the status of the unidentified ship. The display showed it successfully docked at the main port, with station security establishing a containment perimeter. "We have minutes at best," he murmured. "Once they realize you're not where they expect, they'll lock down all potential escape routes." The emergency vessel, a sleek, compact craft designed for rapid medical evacuations, sat in its designated bay, powered down but maintained in constant readiness. Kale led them to the access hatch, inserted the physical override key, and was rewarded with the satisfying sound of mechanical locks disengaging. "Inside quickly," he urged, helping Alara and Lyra through the narrow opening before following them and securing the hatch from within. The vessel's interior was utilitarian. 6 medical transport berths that could double as passenger seats, compact storage compartment for supplies, and a pilot station designed for simplicity of operation. Kale moved immediately to the controls, initiating the power-up sequence. "The startup can't be hidden," he explained as systems came online with pulsing lights and soft tones. "They'll detect it immediately." "How long until we can launch?" 3 minutes for minimum operational capacity. Kale's hands moved across the interface, bypassing safety protocols and pre-flight checks. "I'm rerouting emergency power to the engines and life support, ignoring everything non-essential." The vessel hummed to life around them, vibrating slightly as systems engaged in rapid sequence. On the status display, warning indicators flashed as the accelerated startup strained components designed for more methodical activation. Alara secured Lyra in one of the passenger restraints, then moved to the co-pilot's position. "Can I assist?" "Monitor that display." Kale indicated a secondary screen showing station security status. "Tell me immediately if the indicators change from green to yellow or red." As the evacuation craft approached launch readiness, the station's communications system crackled to life again. "Attention maintenance engineer Kale Thorson. Report to main docking bay immediately. Priority Alpha." Kale exchanged a glance with Alara. "They know." The security status display flashed from green to yellow. "Station lockdown initiating," a mechanical voice announced from the vessel's communication system. "All transport vessels grounded by authority of station security. Override authorization required for departure." "Good thing we have this," Kale said grimly, inserting the physical key into the vessel's emergency launch receptor. The system recognized the override, countering the lockdown command with a priority evacuation protocol. The bay doors began to open, revealing the star-filled void beyond. "Preparing for emergency detachment," Kale announced, activating the final launch sequence. "Secure yourselves." The vessel shuddered as docking clamps released. Without the usual gentle guidance of automated systems, the separation was jarring, the small craft lurching sickeningly before Kale stabilized their position with quick adjustments to the thrusters. "Evacuation vessel." A stern voice came through the communication system. "You are departing without authorization. Return to dock immediately or face severe consequences." Kale ignored the command, focusing on navigating the craft away from the station's immediate vicinity. Once clear, he could engage the main engines for a jump to safe distance. "Security vessel deploying," Alara reported tensely, watching the monitor. "Intercept course." The small security skiff, designed for station perimeter enforcement, emerged from secondary bay, accelerating toward them with warning lights flashing. "They can't stop us, but they can track us," Kale said, hands dancing across the controls. "We need to break tracking before our first jump." "The asteroid field," Alara suggested, indicating the dense cluster of mining debris that surrounded the station's main asteroid. "Their sensors will struggle to maintain lock." Kale nodded, adjusting their course toward the debris field. The evacuation vessel, while not designed for tactical maneuvers, was more agile than the heavier security skiff. They plunged into the swirling mass of rock fragments, Kale's attention entirely focused on navigating the treacherous environment while maintaining enough speed to outpace their pursuer. Behind them, the security vessel followed more cautiously, occasionally losing sight of them among larger fragments before reacquiring their position. We can't keep this up indefinitely, Kale muttered as a proximity alert warned of dangerously close asteroid. The engine's stress alone. An explosion behind them rocked the vessel, sending warning indicators flaring across the control panel. They're firing, Alara exclaimed. Not at us, Kale realized, checking the rear sensors. At the asteroids, creating a debris chain reaction to box us in. A cascade of smaller explosions followed as precisely placed charges detonated on strategic asteroids, the resulting fragmentation pattern creating a rapidly expanding cloud of debris in their path. Hold on, Kale warned, pushing the vessel's thrusters beyond recommended limits. The craft shuddered protestingly as they accelerated through a narrowing gap in the debris, scraping against fragments that screeched along the hull. They burst from the debris field just as the gap closed behind them, effectively cutting off the pursuing security vessel. We've lost them for now, Kale confirmed, checking sensors. But they'll alert Alliance patrol vessels. We need to make our first jump immediately. To where? Alara asked, eyes fixed on the vastness of space now open before them. Kale hesitated only briefly. There's an autonomous research outpost in the Cygnus system. Minimal Alliance presence, primarily scientific personnel. We can resupply there, determine our next move. Can we reach it in this vessel? With 2 jump sequences, yes. It's within this craft's range, barely. Kale began programming the jump coordinates. The first jump will take us to an abandoned mining satellite. No life support, but its position between major transit lanes makes it ideal for avoiding detection. We'll pause there briefly, then make the final jump to Cygnus. As the navigation system accepted the coordinates, Kale glanced back to check on Lyra. The child remained secured in her restraints, watching the proceedings with solemn eyes that seemed too knowing for her age. Is she all right? Kale asked Alara. She understands the danger, Alara replied softly. She has seen much. Too much for one so young. Kale nodded, a familiar ache resurfacing, the grief for his own daughter who had never had the chance to grow older, to develop the quiet resilience he saw in Lyra's eyes. Jump sequence initiating, the vessel's system announced. Secure all loose items. Artificial gravity may fluctuate during transition. The stars outside the viewport elongated, stretching into streams of light as the jump drive engaged. For a moment, reality seemed to bend around them, a sensation that, even after years of space travel, never failed to unsettle Kale's stomach. Then, with a final surge of acceleration, they were through, emerging in the empty space surrounding the abandoned mining satellite. Its dark, irregular shape loomed against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. First jump successful, Kale confirmed, checking systems. Minor hull damage from the debris field, but integrity is holding. Life support stable. Alara released her restraints, moving to check on Lyra. How long until we can make the second jump? The drive needs 20 minutes to recalibrate. I've powered down non-essential systems to minimize our energy signature. Kale's hands moved across the controls, making minute adjustments. We should be relatively invisible to long-range scans. With immediate danger temporarily abated, the reality of their situation settled upon them. 3 fugitives in a stolen emergency vessel, fleeing both Alliance authorities and the mysterious Enclave, with limited supplies and uncertain prospects. Thank you, Alara said quietly, returning to the co-pilot's seat. You have sacrificed everything for us. I had very little to sacrifice, Kale replied honestly. A job, a hiding place, not much of a life. Still, it was yours. Secure, if not fulfilling. Kale glanced at her, noting the fatigue etched in her features, the strain of prolonged flight now showing through her composed exterior. How long have you been running? 6 months by your time measurement, Alara answered. Since the Enclave began their purification campaign in earnest. Before that, we lived in a remote settlement on Erission 4, hidden among other genetic variants and refugees. What happened? The settlement was betrayed. Someone seeking favor with the Enclave revealed our location. Her voice remained steady, but her hands tightened visibly on the armrests. They came at night, with weapons designed specifically to incapacitate our kind. Many were taken. Some were killed resisting. And you escaped? Lyra sensed them coming. Her connection to our security systems gave us warning others didn't have. A faint, sad smile. She saved us that night. A child, saving her mother when it should have been the other way around. Kale looked back at Lyra, who had unfastened her restraints and was examining the vessel's interior with careful curiosity. Her abilities, the connection to technology, it's more than just theoretical understanding, isn't it? It's something deeper. Alara nodded. We call it resonance, an intuitive link with manufactured systems, particularly those with complex operational patterns. The younger generations develop it more strongly, more naturally. Is it something the Enclave wants to harness? Study? No. Alara's response was immediate and firm. They see it as corruption, a deviation from humanity's proper path. Their doctrine holds that true human advancement comes only through discipline, through spiritual and intellectual purity, not through biological change. Yet they use advanced technology themselves, Kale observed. The hypocrisy is not lost on us, Alara said with a hint of bitterness. They employ technology, but believe humans must remain unchanged to maintain control over it. Those who begin to merge with it, even passively as we have, represent a threat to their worldview. The vessel's system chimed softly, indicating the jump drive had completed half its recalibration cycle. 10 more minutes until they could resume their journey. And a galactic alliance? Kale asked, why not seek official asylum? The alliance has treaties with multiple independent systems, including those where the Enclave holds influence. Their policy on genetic variants is inconsistent. Some find protection, others find themselves extradited under diplomatic agreements they do not understand. Alara's gaze turned to the viewport, to the endless dark beyond. We could not risk Lyra's fate to such uncertainty. Kale understood her caution. Alliance bureaucracy could be labyrinthine, its protections dependent on political winds that shifted with each new administration. For those without resources or connections, the system could be as dangerous as it was beneficial. The sanctuary you mentioned, he said, the gathering of others like you. Is it real or just a rumor? Both, perhaps. Alara's expression softened slightly. We have fragments of communications, coordinates passed in whispers between those fleeing. A place beyond established territories where evolutionary variants have established a community. Whether it truly offers the safety we seek. She trailed off, the uncertainty evident. We'll find it, Kale said with more confidence than he felt. After Cygnus, we can acquire a more suitable vessel, better supplies. I have some contacts from before, people who owe me favors or might be sympathetic. Alara studied him with those perceptive eyes. You speak as though your path forward is with us. Isn't it? Kale asked simply. I'm as much a fugitive now as you are. Because of us. Because I asked the impossible of you. Not impossible, Kale countered. Just unexpected. He hesitated, then added, I've been adrift since I lost my family. Existing, not living. Perhaps this is a direction, a purpose. Before Alara could respond, the vessel's proximity alert sounded, a shrill warning that jolted them both to attention. Something's approaching, Kale confirmed, quickly scanning the sensor readouts. Not Alliance design. Moving fast. The silhouette that appeared on the viewing screen sent a visible wave of fear through Alara. Enclave Interceptor, she whispered. How did they find us so quickly? Kale's mind raced through possibilities. The station. If they had deeper access to systems than we realized, they might have detected our jump coordinates. He checked the drive status. 5 minutes until we can jump. Too long. The approaching vessel was sleek and predatory, clearly designed for pursuit and capture. It decelerated as it neared, maneuvering, to block their most obvious escape vectors. They're hailing us, Kale noted as the communication system indicated an incoming transmission. Don't respond, Alara warned. Their communication systems can be used to transmit disabling frequencies. targeted to affect our kind. Like a sonic weapon for our nervous systems. Kale immediately disabled all external communication receivers. Options are limited. We can't outrun them in this vessel, and we're not armed. Lyra approached from behind, speaking urgently to her mother in their native language. What is she saying? Kale asked. She thinks she can help. Illyra translated, concern evident in her voice. With the vessel's systems. To accelerate the jump drive recalibration. That's not possible, Kale began. The recalibration is a physical process, not just computational. The drive components need time, too. Lyra interrupted, speaking directly to him despite the language barrier, her small hands making emphatic gestures toward the control panel. She insists she can create a resonance pattern, Illyra explained, to harmonize the drive components more quickly. The Enclave vessel had moved into position now, its imposing form dominating the viewport. A mechanical clank reverberated through their hull, magnetic grapples attempting to establish a connection. We have nothing to lose, Kale decided. What does she need? Illyra conferred briefly with Lyra, then turned back to Kale. Direct access to the drive control interface. In your help, your knowledge of the specific systems. Another clank, stronger this time. Warning lights indicated the Enclave vessel was beginning to establish a forced docking procedure. Hurry, Kale urged, adjusting the controls to provide access to the jump drive's core programming. Tell her whatever she's going to do, it needs to happen now. Lyra moved to the interface with surprising confidence for a child her age. Her small blue-tinged hands hovered over the control surface for a moment, then made contact. Immediately, the display flickered, data patterns shifting in sequences Kale had never seen before. The child's eyes half-closed in concentration, a soft humming sound emanating from her. Not quite a melody, more a pattern of oscillating tones that seemed to resonate with the vessel's own operational frequencies. What's happening? Kale asked, watching as system indicators fluctuated wildly. She's communing with the drive, Illyra explained, her voice hushed with a mixture of pride and concern, creating a sympathetic resonance between its components to accelerate their alignment. That's not, Kale began, then stopped as he observed the jump drive readiness indicator climbing rapidly. Impossible by conventional understanding, yet happening before his eyes. A violent shudder ran through the vessel as the Enclave ship established its first secure connection, beginning the forced docking process. Emergency override, a mechanical voice announced from their own system. External entity attempting control access. They're hacking in, Kale realized, trying to seize our controls remotely. Lyra's humming intensified, her small form trembling with effort. The jump drive indicator continued its impossible acceleration, 70%, 80%, 85%. A harsh metallic groan signaled the Enclave vessel applying direct pressure to their hull, forcing a physical connection point. Hull breach imminent in Section C, the system warned. Emergency protocols engaging. 90%, 95%. The sound of cutting tools came from the outer hull, the Enclave forcing an entry point. Jump readiness at 100%, the system suddenly announced. Coordinates locked. Initiate. Yes, Kale confirmed urgently, simultaneously activating the emergency detachment protocols to break free from the Enclave vessel's grapples. Lyra collapsed back from the control panel, exhausted. Illyra caught her, cradling the child protectively as the jump sequence initiated with a violent lurch. The view outside distorted as reality bent around them. The Enclave vessel's form stretching and then vanishing as they made the desperate leap to safety. The transition was rougher than standard, the hasty activation and forced acceleration taking their toll on the drive mechanisms. Kale fought to maintain control as the vessel shuddered through jump space, warning indicators flashing across every system. Then, with a final juddering lurch, they emerged. The blue-green orb of Cygnus 3 filled the viewport, its research outpost visible as a small artificial structure in low orbit. We made it, Kale confirmed, checking systems. The drive is completely burned out. No more jumps possible in this vessel. But we're here. Alara held the exhausted Lyra, murmuring soothing words in their language. The child's skin had paled to an almost translucent blue, dark circles visible beneath her closed eyes. "Is she all right?" Kale asked, genuine concern overriding the triumph of their escape. "The resonance takes much energy," Alara explained, stroking Lyra's silver-white hair. "She has never attempted something so complex before. She will recover with rest." Kale initiated contact with the Cygnus outpost, using his engineer's identification codes rather than the vessel's now compromised signature. The autonomous research station, accustomed to irregular visitors bringing supplies or collecting data, granted them landing clearance with minimal questioning. As they began their approach, Alara spoke softly. "You were right, you know." "About what?" "About your path being with us now." She met his gaze steadily. "But not just because you've become a fugitive. Because you chose to help when you could have turned away. Because you risked everything for strangers." "Not strangers anymore," Kale said quietly, glancing at the sleeping Lyra. "Not really." Alara's hand found his on the control panel. A brief, gentle contact. "No, not strangers at all." The vessel descended toward the Cygnus outpost, carrying its 3 passengers toward an uncertain future. Behind them lay the shattered remains of Kale's self-imposed isolation and the constant flight that had defined Alara and Lyra's existence. Before them stretched a journey still fraught with danger, but one they would face together. As the landing gear engaged and the outpost docking bay opened to receive them, Kale realized that for the first time in 5 years, he was moving towards something rather than away. The marriage of convenience had become something more. Not yet love, perhaps, but a bond of trust and shared purpose that offered possibilities he had long since abandoned. The path ahead remained uncertain, a distant sanctuary their goal. But in the sleeping child and her fiercely protective mother, Kale had found something he thought lost forever, a reason to keep going. A family, unexpected and unconventional, but no less real for the strangeness of its formation. The emergency vessel settled onto the landing pad with a gentle thump, powering down for the final time. Its journey complete, just as the solitary journey that had defined Kale's existence for 5 long years had ended. A new journey was beginning. Together,